Hi everyone, R. Aranyeses here, and welcome back to my channel where I make a case for appreciating the complexities and the difficulties of a lot of our contemporary Philippine as well as global political issues, and where I try to convince you to learn how to live with and deal with complexities and difficulties in politics rather than escape or evade them or reduce them into simplistic narratives that only serve to polarize political conversations and prevent genuine dialogue amongst participants in our democratic public spheres. That's why in the first video of this channel, I problematized and complicated, so to speak, these emergent political voices and political commentators in the Philippines today, proliferating across traditional as well as social media platforms and channels. And I asked whether these voices, these commentators, are actually able to lead others to develop their own unique personal opinion on public issues and public matters, or whether they are able to interrogate entrenched as well as new forms of structures of social exclusion that prevent others from participating in our democratic public spheres of deliberation. And for this video, I'll continue exploring this line of investigation and questioning by focusing on a specific character or attribute of these emergent political voices, particularly what seems to be their tendency to represent or portray the relevance of a political incident or a political event or political issues in terms of their impact to the economy, whether these political issues or these political incidents make the economy better or worse for all of us. And I'm not just talking here about issues that fall within the traditional sphere of economic conversations and economic discussions, issues such as inflation, trade, wages, labor, the government's budget, the public debt, or even traffic and and natural disasters, which tend to be discussed today in terms of their impact to the economy. But rather, I'd like to focus on how these political commentators seem to evaluate and investigate even matters that fall within what we can call strictly political issues. Those are issues pertaining to interactions between political actors, both in government and outside government, political movements, as well as legislations being passed by the government itself. I think that these political commentators have that tendency to evaluate or assess these things in terms of their impact to macroeconomic indicators or the overall well-being of the population. Now, you might be wondering, why complicate this? Why problematize this? When in fact, if we talk about politics in terms of how it shapes or impacts our day-to-day needs, our life's necessities, our prospects for survival, growth, and advancement, aren't we actually drawing in more people into the conversation, inviting more participants in democratic debate and deliberation? Because these are issues that matter very deeply to people. Even political science has been deeply concerned with this relationship between economic factors or economic indicators and the conditions that make it better for democracies to thrive, survive, and even consolidate. From Seymour Martin Lipset's modernization theory, which posited a positive correlation between, on the one hand, increasing or rising incomes or rising wages, an expanding middle class, high literacy rates, and on the other hand, better quality of democratic and political institutions, to Marxist, neo-Marxist, and dependency accounts of how global structural economic inequalities impede the possibilities for democracies in the world's underdeveloped or peripheral economies. So there certainly is a merit to asking this question of how certain economic factors or economic conditions create better conditions for democratic institutions. Especially, I think, if they are able to raise the question of how political decisions lead to economic conditions that would destabilize or dismantle existing and entrenched structures that prevent others from fully participating in democratic debate and democratic deliberation. But there is another way in which emergent political commentators today tend to represent political actors and political dynamics in terms of their economic value. That is, by reducing these political actions and political dynamics into conflicts of interests over the spoils of state power or the spoils of government resources or even the economy in general. And when political commentators represent political dynamics this way, they are going beyond just asking, hey, what's the relationship between this political decision or this political action and an economic indicator? They are now ontologically defining political actors as if they are primarily economic actors. That is self-interested, survival-oriented, self-maximizing actors whose only interest in participating in democratic politics is to maximize their gains. This is also the reason for the rather clickbaitish title of this episode, Aren't We All Marxists Now? Because, well, primarily Marx himself was interested in the relationship between politics and economics, particularly in how certain political structures create the situations, the favorable conditions towards the reproduction of dominant economic modes of production. So are we all Marxists now? Because we keep on looking at each other, we keep on looking at politics as if it is primarily an economic act. For Marx, the dominant economic mode of production creates and determines the political structures and other institutions of a society. The ruling classes wield their political power in order to preserve the existing dominant economic mode of production. That's why for Marx, your laws, the state apparatus itself, ideology circulating around society, even popular culture itself, are means by which the existing dominant mode of economic production is preserved and reinforced. And so are our emerging political voices and political commentators today necessary Marxists because of this concern with how certain political decisions impact the economy? Fortunately for some, or unfortunately for some, I won't tell you which is which for me, they are not. Because of a very basic difference. You see, Marx was concerned with how political agents create the conditions that lead to the reinforcement and the preservation of the existing dominant economic mode of production. But he says in the thesis on Feuerbach that while they make history, they do not necessarily make it out of their own doing. That is, the very economic order itself, the dominant economic mode of production itself, lays down the options available for these political actors. And that's the difference. Because for our political commentators, you have your political actors here acting as if they are freestanding agents, shaping and making an impact, on the other hand, on economic issues or economic conditions here. Now, there's another very basic difference between Marx and our existing emergent political commentators. Marx was deeply passionate with the character of this economic modes of production, of these economic modes of production. For him, the economy wasn't some abstract concept. It was practical, it was real, it was material. But when our political commentators, our emerging political commentators today, talk of the economy, they refer to it as if it is something that is abstract, as if it is something that is universal, rather than a historically constituted reality. And this is, I think, what needs problematizing and complicating here. That is the saturation of our public sphere discussions with this almost universal abstract concept of the economy that grips us and allows us to interrogate political realities and other realities from its perspective. Now, my anxiety over this situation is shaped actually not by Marx or his writings, but by someone who had a profound animosity, so to speak, if you can call it that, against Marx and his philosophical writings. And this is coming from the works of Hannah Arendt, a German Jewish political theorist who even called Marx a devil in one of her private correspondences. I'm referring here to Hannah Arendt's critique of the social question, or her introduction of the concept of the social across her works, beginning with the origins of totalitarianism, the human condition, and culminating in her comparison of the French and the American revolutions entitled On Revolution. In that work, Hannah Arendt critiques the French Revolution for having abandoned their quest for freedom and having replaced it with this desire to liberate themselves from the shackles of poverty. Arendt says that the French Revolution failed because they started talking not about political issues, but about issues that are related to economics, that are related to life's necessities. The introduction or the intrusion of this social question into the agenda of the French Revolution created the conditions for its eventual transformation into a dictatorship. Arendt's key argument in On Revolution is that necessities could never be addressed by politics. Politics can never be that venue where the needs of living and of life itself can be properly resolved. Now, politics for Arendt is quite different from how we normally or traditionally understand politics. Politics for her is that sphere of human plurality and of human action existing in a context of multiplicity, existing towards the demonstration of human freedom, which for her is what separates us from animals. For Hannah Arendt, poverty, economic well-being, and survival, and their phenomenological experience of hunger, thirst, deprivation in life, which she bundles with the term misery, cannot generate multiplicity or plurality in the public sphere because they deal with matters that are almost irresistible to us, that demand not long and drawn-out debates and deliberations, but in fact, urgent solutions. That is why for her, if we bring up issues that relate to life's necessities, our economic well-being, and our survival, it's as if we are inviting into the public sphere an irresistible force that will allow us to solve these dilemmas and address these issues altogether. And because this irresistible force represents something that exists well beyond us, well beyond our capacity to do something or to act upon something, it precisely is the opposite of how Arendt understands politics, which is our ability to begin, our ability to act, our capacity for spontaneity through our own human freedom. And while this critique of the social, or her concept of the social question, formed the theoretical architecture for her critique of the evil that she saw in Marxist historical determinism, scholars today are now arguing that Hannah Arendt may have in fact misread Marx either deliberately or, as Hannah Pitkin suggests in her work, The Attack of the Blob. Arendt might have taken a different turn in her reading of Marx because of some personal and private matters. Needless to say, both Arendt and Marx seem to me to be concerned not with life itself or the problem with necessities itself intruding into politics, but rather with this irresistible force, or this, in Marx's notion perhaps, this fetish that invisibilizes the concreteness and the practicality of certain structures of society that affect and shapes our human interactions and human relations. What Arendt warns us against is how these dilemmas or concerns with life's necessities or the economy can actually grip us and make us predisposed to behave. She hates that word with such a deep passion as well. Makes us behave in an almost uniform manner. And this uniformity of behavior, which she sees as an outcome of talking about our necessities and our needs, is not freedom. It doesn't manifest freedom and the human capacity for initiating something new, which differentiates us from each other. It rather represents our uniform and similar desire for abundance. When seen this way, it will now seem that while Hannah Arendt was deeply critical of Marx, they actually share almost the same concern over the question of the economy or life's necessities and its relationship to politics. I think that both Arendt and Marx share this concern over mystifying this concept of the economy and its effect on us, and how it creates a situation where we fail to create or act on something new and begin something new, because we have now naturalized certain situations and taken them as universal truths, such as our universal truth for life itself and our universal hunger for life itself, our universal craving to satisfy our human desires. So let's go back now to the question that I'm problematizing or complicating in this video, and that is whether the emerging political voices or commentators in the Philippines today are actually enhancing the quality of our democratic deliberation by representing political issues and political questions in terms of their impact to the economy. And the answer is, which you may have already predicted, well, it's complex and it's a difficult thinking through and around the concept of the economy and its associated questions of life's necessities, our needs, and our prospects for survival. And so this difficulty and complexity is actually an invitation for us to think more about these issues and be cautious in terms of how we articulate and represent political demands as well as political dynamics. Because while we may have this intention of inviting more people to talk about it, we might actually end up simply whipping people into just one behavior rather than generating a plurality or a multiplicity of opinions. If you like this video, do please consider to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.